The new My Hero Academia chapter has confirmed one of my predictions about the helicopters. The impact I predicted for such a news report is exactly what happened at the end of this new Boku no Hero Academia chapter. Today I will explain why that's actually not a good sign. The awakening of the Ultimate Demon Lord is almost here, and he will be much more powerful than we could ever imagine. The new chapter begins with Makia attacking All For One. It looks like there's a lot of emotions involved, which is because he's actually no longer controlled but acts with free will due to All For One's betrayal, who by the way seems to have found a keen interest in Shinzo's quirk. He says that what Shinzo did to Makia and the Aoyama family is exactly what he would have done as well. This statement fits well with what Shinzo said about himself in this chapter, that is, that many think he often acts like a villain. Based on that, I wouldn't rule out that All For One will at least try to steal Shinzo's quirk. So far he only has two quirks on his wish list, Dark Shadow and Brainwash. I don't think Shinzo will lose his quirk though. In general, his quirk is not considered very useful, which is why he didn't make it into the hero class. Only with a lot of work and especially physical training did he manage to make himself more useful than many other heroes with great quirks. So in my opinion, it will be pretty harsh to take that quirk away from him. In Tokiyami's case it will be very tragic as well, but at least in his case we will see his true face. And All For One will get one of the strongest abilities there is. With the Dark Shadow he will become twice as scary. But Horikoshi would have to have huge balls to take the quirk away from someone in Class 1A. So let's not get our hopes up too high, unless they can somehow get their quirks back after the war, perhaps after defeating All For One. For example, if All For One dies, maybe all the quirks he stole will then return. That will be a good solution. Whatever will happen in this regard, I stand by my opinion that very soon at least one important hero or student will lose their quirk. Losing a quirk is almost worse than dying. So far we haven't seen a really important hero lose their quirk, so that is something that is still on the bucket list of this last My Hero Academia arc. Back to the chapter, the heroes fear that All For One will be able to break the connection between Shinzo and Makia with a strong physical attack, but then it turns out that Makia is no longer controlled. We see him say that although he looks different, he can clearly recognize All For One. He asks him why he left him. At the time, All For One told him that he had to leave him because he had to go into hiding. But eventually his successor will come looking for him, and even though Shigaraki found him, Makia feels betrayed because All For One never returned. He's very emotional about this. Then we see how confused Shinzo is because it's the second time someone has been able to resist his brainwashing. First Midoriya and now Makia too. Even under his control, Makia kept muttering that he was betrayed by All For One. It almost seems as if as long as the controlled person is forced to do something they want to do anyway, that the effect of the brainwash quirk might be less effective. And if there is a strong emotional connection, then it might be that the person could free themselves from the control. Brainwashing someone into doing something they will do anyway is pretty useless. So maybe that's really the main reason Makia was able to break free. A very nice little moment was when Hawk said that no one wants to read a story about a demon lord. That's because All For One actually really likes reading comics, but he hated the fact that even though the villains are always stronger, for some reason they always lose. So he wanted to create his own story where he is the villain. Then we see everyone attacking All For One at the same time, with a plan to do so until All For One ceases to exist because of the rewind quirk. It's actually enough to wait until All For One is a child and loses his quirk. I'm really curious to see how the heroes will deal with a child All For One. The scene then cuts to the helicopters we saw at the end of the last chapter. Last time I predicted two possibilities, and one of them came true exactly as I explained it, with every little detail I mentioned. We see the reporter that we have seen several times in many different arcs. As soon as she saw the livestream that La Brava spread on the internet through hacking, she immediately took a helicopter to cover this war. She's very emotional about the fact that Deku, whom she recognized, could become so strong in just 1 year, and is now protecting the world from Shigaraki. And as we saw in the last chapter, there were two helicopters, and the other one is another reporter or journalist. Again, someone we have seen before in the past. It is the person who badmouthed Endeavor during the press conference. She realized how much damage she actually did with her actions just to get these big headlines. So she says that she has to cover this war and that it goes beyond normal journalism. It is a personal matter. And then we see exactly what I described in the last chapter, namely that it's important to spread the word about the war and show everyone in the world what's really happening in Japan right now. Because most countries have given up on the idea of being able to defeat All For One. That is why the truth about this war is so important, because the reality is very different from what the whole world assumes. Then we see how the whole world is informed about the true events of the war against All For One. We see international heroes, which indicates that they will also realize that it is not too late to support the heroes in Japan, and that they will appear very soon in this final war as I predicted last time. This information will change the entire war, but let me tell you this, I think it's pretty obvious that All For One and Shigaraki no longer have the upper hand. In fact, they haven't for a while. Shigaraki is still doing pretty well, to be honest, but even he is having a lot of trouble, especially against Deku. All For One, however, has no chance at all, not even a little bit. The villains are losing more and more allies, and in the coming chapters, most likely even more villains will change sides. And more heroes get power-ups, while All For One is getting weaker every second and Shigaraki is not getting stronger. Once All For One is defeated, all heroes just have to go to Shigaraki and the war is over. There's absolutely no chance that Shigaraki can manage to win against all the heroes at the same time. So overall it looks very bad for All For One. Now, probably because of this news, many more heroes from all over the world will join the war. In terms of the story, this is actually completely unnecessary since the heroes already have an advantage anyway. The heroes don't need any more support, they seem to be winning already. But the fact that this happens anyway only means that this arc is going to get very dark very soon. It should be pretty obvious that the transformation into the Ultimate Demon Lord is going to happen. This is a standard plot where the main villain always reaches full power first and is only then defeated. So the fact that the heroes get even more reinforcements only means because they really need it. Not now, but for the moment when the Ultimate Demon Lord appears. Something will happen at any moment that could change everything. For example, Kurogiri teleporting All For One to Shigaraki or something like that. Or we are on the verge of a huge plot twist, you know, the typical last minute revelation of a true main villain who has always controlled the events in the background and manipulated both sides, heroes and villains. And that's it for today. So what do you think of this new My Hero Academia chapter? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this review, please leave a like, it really helps me a lot. And if you want to see more Boku no Hero Academia content, then subscribe to this channel with the notification bell activated. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye.